Welcome to the first presentation in this video series where we will be focusing on various aspects of critical thinking. So, task 1, being critical. What does the term critical thinking mean to you? Just take a minute and make a list before moving through the rest of the PowerPoint and video series. So what is critical thinking? Not accepting things at face value, asking questions about the information, arguments, and ideas you come across. This can help you think clearly, strengthen your arguments, and ask powerful questions. And the actual definition is the objective analysis and evaluation of an issue in order to form a judgment. How do you do it? So, look out for assumptions and illogical reasoning, or fallacies as we will look at. Challenge your own bias and stereotypes. Check the credibility of your sources or of a source in news articles and other research papers. Look for facts to support or contradict information. And question your sources. Why? Who says? So what? When you look at content that focuses on critical thinking, this image tends to come up. You've got two individuals, one standing one side of this number, the other standing on the other side of this number. One argues that it is a 6, and the other argues that it is a 9. Now, the things that we would start to ask ourselves if we were being critical, is there a dot or line which shows which way the number should face? Are there any other numbers nearby? So, for example, if there was a 5 below it and a 7 above it, it would be a 6 maybe. Or if it was an 8 below and a 10 above, then maybe it would be a 9. Does it line up with a driveway or a building? Depending on where the number actually is. Is there anyone who might know if it's a 6 or a 9? And what would their reasoning for it be? And who painted the number? If we went back to the original source and asked that individual, we'd probably get the answer we needed. And I know this is a really simplified example of how you would apply critical thinking, but I still think it's a really good example. Now, one thing we have to do when we're thinking critically is assess arguments. So what is an argument? Well, an argument can have a description, a spoken or written account of a person, object, or event. There can be assertions, so a statement of fact or belief provided without support or justification. Then you can have a premise, so a previous statement or proposition from which another is inferred or follows as a conclusion. And then you have the argument, so an attempt to persuade someone through reasoning that they should agree to a conclusion. Now, when we are evaluating arguments, we should be looking for references to other academics, so the evidence. Is that evidence appropriate? Is the style of the argument a strong style? Does it have logic? Is there a logical flow between the premises or the assertions that the individual is making? And then, are there any important implications? What makes an argument? Now, an argument here has two premises and a conclusion. So, all actors are robots. Tom Cruise is an actor. Therefore, Tom Cruise is a robot. Now, with no evidence or believing that premise 1 and premise 2 were true, you would say that that was good logic and there is a logical conclusion. However, at the present time, the first premise here is a false premise. Therefore, Tom Cruise is not a robot. Now, the next argument we have is all tigers are mammals. Number 2, Tony is a mammal. The premises are true, both of those are true. However, there is bad logic because we have, therefore, Tony is a tiger. But within this argument, there could be other mammals that are called Tony. Therefore, the logic in this argument is invalid. And then finally here, I just wanted to put an example of what you may see within research. So you have the first premise, beetroot juice is loaded with polyphenols and dietary nitrates. With evidence, or with a citation to show evidence, polyphenols and dietary nitrates from vegetables have been shown to be beneficial for cardiovascular health. Another citation there. Therefore, it can be concluded that beetroot juice is beneficial to good cardiovascular health. Now here, two assertions can make an argument, but what you have to do is ensure that the premises are true and the logic is good. So, features of an argument, just to kind of wrap up that, okay? Aims to persuade someone. There are assumptions within the argument. There are reasoning. There should be evidence. And there should always be a conclusion. Now, when we think critically, we should be looking in an argument, all of the premises to be true, and the conclusion must logically follow on from the premises, the premise of the premises. And then what makes that argument strong? So relevant, credible evidence, the foundation of your claim, thesis or argument, illustrative examples, so ways to show rather than tell the reader your case. Clear, well-explained connections, a guide for the reader to follow through the argument, and authoritative structure and style. So consistent, it has to be well organised, and academic presentation of information, in our case, within this course. Now, the 5 elements of an argument. According to Booth, Column and Williams, every argument consists of the same 5 elements. So, what is being claimed? What reasons support this claim? What evidence supports those reasons? Do you acknowledge this alternative, complication, objection, and how do you respond? And 5, what warrant justifies the connection of your reasons to your claim? So one aspect of critical thinking that you should be able to do is deconstruct an argument. Here we have a short task which we'll run through. Our research suggests that teams with clearly defined roles and expectations outperform those with more fluid structures. When a team has a fluid structure, it shows that debate and delegation are difficult. By contrast, clearly defined roles and expectations facilitate debate and delegation. Given that arranging team training in order to clearly define roles and expectations is affordable, and there are no other obvious effective alternatives at a similar cost, we would recommend this training as a budgetary priority for firms in this sector. Now, pause the video quickly and see if you can separate this argument out into 2 premises and a conclusion, and then another 2 premises and a conclusion. The next slide has the results. So as you can see here, the argument has now been deconstructed into premise 1, premise 2, conclusion 1, premise 3, premise 4, conclusion 4. And as you can see, when a team has a fluid structure, debate and delegation are difficult. There's one premise of a statement that's being made. Premise 2, clearly define roles and expectations facilitate debate and delegation, and that leads into the first conclusion. Teams with clearly defined roles and expectations outperform those with more fluid structures and debate. And then the second half of the argument on the previous slide has just been separated into premise 3, 4, and the second conclusion there.